Hi, I'm Diana Wehbe. I'm a radio personality, media personality, and I'm the executive director of a nonprofit and a motivational speaker, and I'm a voice of hope. I'm Lebanese, and most people are like, what the heck is that? It's a very small country in the Middle East. Most people think I'm Hispanic or mixed, but it's actually really cool when I tell them that I'm Lebanese, because then it opens up this like really great conversation. Not to mention, if I ever cook them Lebanese food, life gets real good real fast for everybody. Yeah, I'm full Lebanese. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, raised in Southern California, and I went to school in Moreno Valley, California, which is a very small city in the Inland Empire, Southern California region. And my life growing up was amazing. Like, I speak to a lot of kids, and a lot of times, you know, they grew up in much different circumstances than I did. And a lot of times I can tell them, I didn't grow up in your circumstances, but I do love everyone. And I feel like I grew up in a very fortunate circumstance. I had both mother and father there for me growing up. We weren't rich, we weren't poor, we were just, you know, we got by, we were cool. I always had everything I needed. They sacrificed everything to make sure I had everything I needed. I had a really great upbringing, and I'm grateful for them every day. I'm who I am today because of my parents. I'm a great mixture of, if you ever met them, you'd be like, those are her parents, because I'm exactly who they are. Exactly who they are. I grew up in a family that a bunch of overachievers, doctors, lawyers, engineers, really smart, book smart people. So I was, you know, there was always this very high bar set for me. And when I, you know, graduated high school, top of my class, got into college, hated college. You know, I was told in high school, they tell you in high school, when you get to college, you get to do whatever you want. You get to take whatever classes you want, it's gonna be great. You get to college, you don't get to do that. They still tell you what to do. I had a very difficult time figuring out what my path in life was. And so one day I decided, you know what, I'm gonna start taking some acting classes. I don't know, I didn't think I could act, but I just knew that being a lawyer or a doctor was not for me. I just couldn't take it, the classes were too boring, I just couldn't handle it. And so I started, you know, auditioning for plays, and I got cast. The first play I auditioned for, I got cast. Second play I auditioned for, I got cast. And I didn't just get cast, I got leading roles. I ended up at the KCACTF, which is the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival, and I did stupendously well there. I competed with actors from across the nation on stage, and it was like my second acting role ever. And I was like, all right, God, I guess this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm doing really well here. Simultaneously, I applied for a job at a radio station, 99.1 KGGI in Riverside. It's a Clear Channel iHeartRadio station. And I was 21 years old. And I got the job, but I applied to be on the street team, because you can't just apply to be on the air if you've never been on the air and you're 21. No one's going to give you that job. And so I applied to be on the street team, and I got the job. And I thought, okay, well, now I'm here. And I was going to school at Cal State LA, and so I was just driving back and forth, and things were getting really awkward for me. And so I set a goal in mind, and I said, I want to be on the radio. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to work really hard for 6 months. And in 6 months, if I'm not on the radio, I'm quitting radio, and I'm just going to stay in LA, and I'm going to act, and that's what I'm going to do for my life, for a living. And so I worked really hard for 6 months. And you know, everybody has haters, so I couldn't openly work hard. I had to work hard in the quiet, in the middle of the night when nobody was there and nobody knew what I was doing. And 6 months had come. It was like 5.5 weeks. And you know, as a respectable employee, you're supposed to put your 2-week notice in before you quit. So I went in, I put my 2-week notice in, and my boss said, hey, where are you going? And I said, I'm quitting, I'm moving to LA. You know, I'm going to Cal State LA. I got all kinds of stuff I'm working on in LA. I'm going to move out. And he said, well, before you leave, before you quit on us, can I get a demo from you? But I said, sure, but he didn't know I had been practicing for 6 months. He didn't know I was actually pretty good. And he didn't know I knew what I was doing. So I came in the next day, knocked on his door. I gave him a demo. He treated me like an indie artist. He put my record on the table, and he was like, cool, you have a great day. And I was like, I'm moving to LA in 2 weeks. Are you going to listen to that? And he was like, yeah, I'm going to listen to it. You have a good day. And I was like, No, I mean, are you going to listen to it now? Because I'm moving in 14 days. And I figured, okay, I could get fired, but at the same time, I'm already quitting, so I really don't have much to lose. So I sat down as if to say, put the CD in the CD player and play it. And he did. He listened to it. He gave it a good 2-3 seconds, as most PDs do. And he took the CD out, and he started writing. And he wrote all this stuff in red marker of all things. Red is usually like the sign for failure. So I'm sitting on this couch sweating bullets. I'm 21 years old, freaking out. And he hands me this paper and it just says entertainment, news, music, sports, weather. And he hands me this paper and he says, go back in the studio, give me another air check, and I want you to talk about these things. I was like, cool. So it was 6 p.m. I stayed till 2 in the morning. I worked on this air check. Next morning, 10 a.m., I'm back at it, knocking on his door. I handed him this air check. He said, what's this? I said, my air check. And he said, oh, the same one from yesterday? And I said, no, this is a new one with all this stuff on it that you asked me to do. And he goes, okay, cool, same thing. Treated me like an indie artist. He put the CD on his desk. He said, have a great day. I said, look, man, I got 13 days before I move to LA, so what's up? Are you going to listen to it or not? And he's like, damn, you're a pain in my ass. And I said, all right, well, are you going to listen to it or should I leave? And he was like, nah, I'll listen to it, sit down. He puts the CD in. He gave it a smooth 10 seconds that time. He gave me 10 seconds of his life. And he writes on a piece of paper. He writes, Saturday nights, 10 to midnight, mix show. And he hands it to me. And I was like, what's this? He's like, you want the job or not? And I was like, are you hiring me right now? And he was like, I'm hiring you. I was like, are you really hiring me? I just got hired? And he said, yeah. And I was like, this is you're playing with me, right? You're hiring me? I don't even know how to turn the mic on. Wait, let me not say that. You're hiring me? He was like, yeah, I took that paper and I ran with it. And I've been on the radio for 7 years. When I started in radio, I had no vision. I just knew, like any young person, like, oh my God, I get to hang out with celebrities and I get to interview people and I get to play music and get paid. Like, that's all I had in my head. I didn't have a vision. I didn't have any driving force besides that. I wanted to become bigger and take Ryan Seacrest's job, and like that's the only vision I had. I didn't have anything in my mind that was substantial. No, I was young and I got a really cool job at a really young age, which doesn't happen to very many people. In July of 2012, I was 26. I was diagnosed with an ovarian cyst at the time. A few months back, they told me it wasn't a big deal. Fast forward to July, 6 months later, it doubled in size. And so it was about the size of a grapefruit at this time. They also told me it was cancerous, and that same exact week I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. That week changed my entire life. The person you see here today is not the person you would have met in 2012. That week, I spent a lot of time with God. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how at 26, a girl who works in radio and gets to have fun for a living could be taken down by two of the biggest illnesses in the nation that take down everybody. I couldn't understand that. When I was diagnosed, I thought, maybe if I ignore it, it'll go away, because this isn't for me. This is, you put it on someone else. You think, oh, that's for that other person who is living wrong, or that other person who did bad things in their life, and this is why this happened to them. You try and make excuses for why it would happen to someone else and not you. And then I had to come to reality with it. And that week, God did some really good things with me. And he picked me up out of my bedroom on July 23rd. Well, July 24th, 2012. July 23rd, I was with the struggle in the house crying. July 24th, 2012, I left my bedroom and I decided to turn down surgery, turn down medication, and to take a leap of faith. And to trust God that his plan for me and his purpose for me was bigger than this illness, or both of those, or all three of those illnesses, was bigger than radio, was bigger than anything else that could ever tear me down. And so for 10 months, I started on a journey that I'm still on today. I went from a typical Western diet to eating nothing but completely organic vegan produce overnight. I mean, this change happened like this. It was, once you're destined for something, it happens. There's no in-between phase, there's no lukewarm, there's no gray area. It's like, yo, when God calls you, you go. And you hear that calling and you're like, all right, I should probably get up now and go do it. And so I did. And I haven't cheated. I haven't turned back from that lifestyle since July 24th, 2012. And within those 10 months, diabetes-free, cancer-free, lost 100 pounds. You seriously wouldn't recognize me if I showed you a picture. Happiest I've ever been in my life. I wake up grateful that I was sick. I wake up grateful that I had the opportunity to change my life and to hear him, because a lot of us don't. And I think everyone's calling is different. You know, someone else could have been sick and their calling could have been to have surgery, and that surgery could have changed their life. For me, this was my calling. It was my calling to not have the surgery. It was my calling to listen to what God was asking of me and do it. And it's changed my life. I started a nonprofit because of it. I wrote a book because of it. I failed English 3 times in college and I wrote a book. Who knew? My life, I can't tell you how many thousands of people a week I hear from that are like, you and your story have changed my life. And I say, I didn't do anything. That was God, because he changed my life and he's changing yours. And that's hope. That's being a vessel. That's purpose. That's turning trials into triumph and testimony and all of those other things. That's my life. I had been on the radio for 6 years, and the Purpose Project happened in my life in 2012 and is still continuing till now, but the major changes happened 2012, 2013. August of 2013, I had new management at the radio station. We had new management across the board. I had been on the radio for 2 hours a week for 6 years. 2 hours a week for 6 years. I had one show, it was 2 hours long, once a week. In August of 2013, after all these changes had happened, I had 2 new bosses. And they called me into their office one day, and I told my DJ friend at the time, we were driving back from, I was speaking at LA Live at the Getty Museum. And we were driving back, and I told him, I said, yo, I'm getting fired today. And he said, what? I said, I'm getting fired today. I was like, my boss never calls me. He called me today. I'm getting fired. And he was like, oh, God. And I laugh now because, well, I kind of laughed that time, too, because of what else are you going to do? So I said, I'm getting fired today. He was like, why do you say that? And I was like, I don't know. He never calls me. So I get to the radio station, and they put 2 contracts in front of me. And I was like, I've never seen people give you a contract to fire you. They usually just say, bye, Felicia, and you're up out of there. And they said, we want to offer you 2 shows. And I said, what? You want to offer me 2 shows? And they said, we want to offer you the morning show and the midday show. And I didn't react. I wish I could have recorded what happened that day, because I didn't have a reaction. I literally thought I was getting fired. I ended up getting 2 promotions. And what makes things even crazier is that week I had prayed and I had asked God if it was time for me to move on. And I felt like he said yes, so I was going to quit radio altogether last August, a year ago. I ended up taking these 2 jobs, and the very month that I got this promotion, J. Cole, my favorite artist, came to the radio station. And being that I signed these 2 contracts, I prayed a lot about it, and I told my bosses, they asked me if there were any stipulations, if I needed more money, if the contracts were okay, because I didn't sign the contract for about 3 weeks. And I said, I just need some time to figure things out if this is where I'm supposed to be going. And the one thing I ended up asking for was freedom of speech. And I said, you know, the biggest reason you want to hire me is because all these changes have happened in my life, and I'm an inspiration to our community, and you want me to be a voice to the community on your airwaves. But the reason I'm able to be an inspiration is because God changed my life. So I need to freely be able to express that on the air. Am I going to preach? No. But I need to be able to feel like if I mention God or Jesus, you're not going to shut me down every 5 seconds. And they said, okay, done. Say whatever you want. Really? I can say whatever I want on a top 40s hit music radio station. Is this a game? In 2 weeks, are y'all going to come in there and be like, you can't, you know? I was waiting. I was like, this is a trick. This is trickery. But it's been a year, and I'm able to do that. So J. Cole comes in, and I knew that getting this job wasn't about me getting promoted just to be promoted. I knew that me getting this job was a part of God's divine purpose in my life, to be a voice in a place of darkness. The entertainment industry is dark. And so me being as bright and vivacious as I can be, I go in and I'm being myself, and I don't know how to turn that down. So whether J. Cole or Mariah Carey comes in, I'm still going to tell them my story, because I need to, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my story, and they wouldn't either in reality. So J. Cole came in, my favorite, Jermaine. He sits down, and I'm thinking, okay, I got a room. We had an audience during this interview, and I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be kind of weird when I segue into this story, but I'm just going to go for it. And they're not going to shut me down. I mean, we're recording live. It's on the air. There's people here. I'm taking a big chance, but I'm going to do it. People have done crazier things, I think. And so I told him my story. I told J. Cole my story of the Purpose Project. And I told him about Faith, Food, and Fitness. And I told him about the Purpose Foundation. And I asked him what his purpose is. And it became something that is now in every single interview that I do, because it's a part of who I am. And I know if it's a part of me, God doesn't just love me, he loves everybody. So everybody has purpose. And so I've now had to figure out, how can I spark that for them, for the artist, but not only for the artist, but for those who are watching this artist and hoping to learn something more than, oh, who's featured on your album? Who cares? You can flip over the album and see that on the back cover. You don't need to ask them that. Like, there's time to ask these things. And so I didn't used to be a person who was confident enough to ask these types of questions or to dig. And now I dig, but I don't dig to get juice or gossip on them. I dig to pull the best out of them. And so J. Cole was a little hesitant in the beginning of our interview off the air. And I told him I had some really serious questions I wanted to ask him. And he was like, whoa, you know, like, don't get me in trouble. I don't need tabloids on me. And this is an off-air conversation, but I told him, I said, I'm not the bad guy. You know, I'm not the one trying to get you in trouble. I'm not the one trying to have you end up on the cover of whatever magazine. Oh, he told this radio personality. I said, that's not my job. I'm actually here to uplift you. And I want your fans to see you in a different light than how they see you now. And he was like, so this isn't gonna be negative. And I was like, no, do I look like a negative person to you? I was like, no, this is gonna be a very positive experience. Same thing, I mean, you could, Ariana Grande, Nick Cannon, I mean, Jasmine V was in there, Jasmine V.S. was in there today. The list goes on. I can't tell you how many artists I've asked. Chevy Woods, I mean, anyone from Taylor Gang, Wiz Khalifa, YG, Problem, any artist, Nipsey Hussle, like, it doesn't matter what background, where they're from, what type of artist they are, how big they are, I will sit you down and I will ask you why God put you on this planet and what your purpose is. And if you're using your music to do that, or if there's some other outlet that maybe music is your platform and there's something else that you're doing with your life that is your purpose. There's this little boy named Mark. I went to a middle school when I first started speaking to kids. And middle schools are my favorite. I'm 12, 13-year-olds. They are my absolute favorite kids to talk to. They know so much. It's insane. So I went to this school, and it was a school about 1,400 middle school kids. And 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Spoke to the entire student body. And afterwards, the teacher came up to me and she said, Diana, there's about 50 kids that I want you to sit down with, very special needs kids. They all have special circumstances. They've all been hurt in some kind of way in their home, and they need extra attention than the other classmates. I said, okay. And I stayed. And so she put them in a room separate from all these other kids after the assembly was over. And I walked into this room. There's supposed to be 50 kids there. I walk into this room. My jaw and her jaw hit the floor. There was 150 kids in this room. There was only supposed to be 50. The kids were screaming and telling their teacher, I'm not going to go back to class. I need to talk to her about something. I need to open up to her, and I need her to help me. 150 kids. I wasn't prepared for that at all. We sat down on the auditorium floor. It was freezing. It was in December. It was really, really cold. We all sat on the floor together, and everyone kind of sat in a circle, and I sat in the middle of the circle. And I asked them if they prayed. I asked all the kids, how many of you pray? A couple of them said yes, a couple of them said no, a couple of them didn't answer. And I said, well, we're gonna pray. This is a secular school. This is not a Christian campus. We all prayed together. And there was one kid, his name was Mark. I will never forget this kid. He was sitting behind his friend. Like, so everyone's in a circle, single file circle. He didn't sit in the circle. He sat behind his friend. He had a hoodie on. Little white boy, and he was hiding behind his friend the entire time we were having this conversation. And we were there for probably about 3 hours, all of us together, after school. Towards the middle of this conversation, he comes out and joins the circle. And at that time, I took a very big risk because I could tell he was shy, but I pulled him in, and I had him sit next to me. And I said, what's wrong with you? You've been crying since we got here. And his friend answered. He didn't answer me. His friend answered. And she said, he's gay, he's 12. Well, he thinks he's gay, and he's 12. And he wants to die. And I said, prove it. And he stopped crying, and he said, what? And I said, prove it. He said, prove that I want to die? And I said, yeah, prove it. And he gets up, and he takes his shirt off. And he has cuts from here to here, across his chest, all the way down his second arm, and on the back of his calves. I've never seen something this bad. And he's 12. I took a second, and I asked if any of the other kids felt the same way. And if they did, to come sit where I was sitting in the middle of this circle. At that point, we didn't have a circle anymore. The circle was gone. All the kids were sitting around me and Mark. So I said the same thing to them. I said, prove it. Jackets come off, shirts are coming off, handkerchiefs, watches are coming off. These are 12 and 13-year-olds at a middle school. In my neighborhood, in the community that I serve, that I speak to every day. So I stayed for another hour and a half. And I sat and I cried with them and I prayed with them. And what I took from that day was that the only thing that anyone ever wants, that I ever talk to, is to be loved. That's it. Every one of those kids has said they put me in a program, they ask me a lot of questions, they give me a lot of answers, but nobody has offered love. And so for me, being someone that grew up in a home with love, and being someone who, even when I felt like I didn't have anyone, when I got sick and God gave me love, I felt like the only thing I could do was to show love. And that comes from somewhere genuine, deep inside of who I am. And I serve a community that is much younger than me, much more troubled than me. They have so many burdens. They're so much more burdened than I am. And they're 12 and 13 and 10. And I think, why? For what? These are kids. Why bring them here if you don't want them? What? For what? You didn't have to have a child, but you did. Take care of them. And so I dedicate my time to this community who may or may not appreciate it, and it doesn't matter, because I see change in them. I see just in those 2 or 3 hours that I sit on a cold floor in the middle of an auditorium in the city of Fontana, I see change. And that's 3 hours of my life. What's 3 hours? And so yeah, I serve a community. I serve a very large community of young people, and I love them. I can't explain the love I have for kids. I don't have kids of my own. I don't even know if I can physically have kids anymore. That doesn't matter, because there's so many kids who don't have someone. And I feel like I'm that someone. And that's my calling. That's my purpose. Me getting sick took me here.